Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Darren and Doon. You might think, well, Will looks a little bit different. The truth is, he's left. He's gone. In a week where Oasis have got back together, one of the biggest reunions we've ever seen, something had to give, and Darren and Doon is no more. Will has left the podcast. I'm only joking. He's on a holiday in Poland with no signal. But stepping in, I'd like to welcome Seb, who's already obviously been on the podcast before. We did the quiz together ages ago. Obviously got his own YouTube channel, own TikTok page as well. Seb, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. I'd say an upgrade on Will, definitely. So
yeah, fuck off, Will. We don't need you anymore, mate. We've got this.
Exactly.
We've got this.
Exactly.
We haven't done a podcast since the Newcastle game. We are going to touch on it briefly, but this is kind of going to be a bit more of a holistic conversation about the first three games of the season, what's to come this year, how kind of we're both feeling about Spurs at the moment, because it feels like there's a lot of negativity, but is that actually kind of the true reflection of how Spurs fans are really feeling about Ange Postecoglou and kind of the project that we're on at the moment? So the first thing I kind of wanted to ask you, Seb, is like, we'll talk about Newcastle quickly after this. How are you feeling about Spurs at the moment? Like, obviously, international break, which I think, speaking for myself, I'm quite grateful for. I mean, it's going to be very boring, as we were just sort of talking about before we started recording this, in terms of, you know, talking points and making videos and stuff. But I think it's frustrating that it's kind of come at a point so early in the season, after just 3 games. But I feel like maybe we just need it a little bit to step back. How are you feeling about Tottenham generally at the moment?
A lot better than the people on Twitter, I can say that for sure. But I think it has come at a good point for us. I think obviously the Newcastle game was difficult, a really frustrating way to lose that. But I think generally with the project and Ange Postecoglou, I'm very positive about it. I'm positive about the direction our squad's going, and I do think we are improving. You know, I think you look at the first half against Leicester, the entire game against Newcastle, apart from 2 moments, really, I'm quite positive about it. I really like the squad we got. I think Ange, you know, if he's, you know, allowed to work with that squad in peace over the entirety of the season, I again think you'll see progression from Spurs. Hopefully we have a good go at the cup competition as well. I think that'll be the key for us. I think if we go out early in the Europa League or one of the cup competitions, I think that could really put a dampener on things. So I want a good run in the cup competitions, and then I feel like that positivity will really start building around Spurs. And people can sort of be reminded about how good our squad actually can be, especially with all this young talent now. So I'm positive about it, a lot more positive than a lot of other people, I think.
Me too. And that's the thing. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit later in terms of like whether the fan base is actually as divided as being made out. I feel like there's a lot of people that are maybe trying to ram things down other people's throats in terms of how you should feel about Spurs. Maybe that works both ways in terms of people being positive but also being negative. But I feel like the people who are mostly positive just want to get on with supporting their football club and just are able to see where we're actually going and see the kind of green shoots that are there, despite the fact that, you know, we've had a mixed start to the season in terms of results: 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw. Again, I wanted to ask you about the obviously me and Will spoke about this on a pod on deadline day in terms of the transfer window. Obviously, I think a lot of the negativity has kind of come from that. I also think that looking forwards, like you said, in terms of the cup competitions, we got knocked out early last year by Fulham. Obviously, the first 2 games after the break are Arsenal, which, again, I don't think we'll come on and talk about that a little bit more later in terms of the run that we've got. We spoke about this on a live on Monday. I don't think that's helping with the kind of feeling around the club. Like I said, I feel like the break has almost come at a good time in terms of maybe the fan base just kind of needing it just to step back and reassess what's actually going on. But it's just a bit of a shame that first game back is Arsenal. But then the game after that is Coventry away, which, you know, it is a massive game in terms of like we said, cup competitions last year. We got knocked out by Fulham early doors. We got knocked out by Man City in the FA Cup. Is what it is. Not really a big issue. Again, it's a shame to go out early, but it does feel like Ange kind of needs that this year. And obviously, then Europe kind of kicks off again as well. That Coventry game could feel like a bit of a banana skin. We're gonna predict kind of the next 8 games coming up towards the end of the pod, because we have got a very big run coming after the international break. How do you now we're kind of a week out of it, how do you reflect on the transfer window and kind of what Spurs maybe could have done? Because in my opinion, I kind of feel like I'm really happy with what Spurs did. It's more about what Spurs didn't do, which is kind of going to be the story of it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's always the case, isn't it? What you don't do almost kind of overshadows what we did do. And I think also the fact that we got a lot of our good business done early on. You look at the likes of Lucas Bergvall came in and people kind of brush over because we signed him in January, but then actually joined the club in the summer. I think Archie Gray was done very early on as well. Solanke was done towards the middle of the transfer window. So, yeah, I do feel like what we did was really, really good. Solanke was a huge addition for us, really, really big. I think that striker position was the area that we needed to address this summer, as well as a couple of others that we maybe failed to. And I think that's the big thing, really, isn't it? I think, especially when you look at the fact that we want to fight on all four fronts for every single trophy this season, and well, not trophy in the Premier League, but top four, getting back in there. And I think you do need that squad depth. And the areas that I'm looking at is a little bit thin, is that number 6 role in midfield, I think. Yeah. And I also think that left side of defence is an area that could have been definitely addressed that wasn't addressed. So I think that was an issue. But I think also when you look at the outgoings, I was really positive about the outgoings, getting a lot of our wage bill reduced, which I think was something else that was quite important for Spurs. So I think when you look at it, there's lots of good there. I think, we've added lots more young talent. I think the Min Hyuk Yang, who's joining in January as well, he'll be a positive addition on that left-hand side. So yeah, lots to be positive about, but I think there are some glaringly obvious issues that weren't addressed, like mainly that left side of defence back up for me. Because if a Doggy or Van get injured, it's going to be a bit of a long day for us.
Yeah, and we've kind of already, that's kind of added to that feeling of, a little bit of discontent, because we've already seen that now, haven't we? With Van de Ven obviously not making the trip to Newcastle on Sunday. Let's quickly touch on Newcastle then. We did a chat. We did chat about the game on Monday on a TikTok live stream. So anyone that was there and is listening to this, thanks for joining. We kind of do those regularly throughout the season, mostly once a week or so. Yeah. What just for the people here, what did you kind of make of the game, and what encouraged you and what didn't you like? Obviously, other than the result, much better performance than last year, but ultimately kind of still coming away with nothing.
It's such a shame. It really is, because I thought for 75 minutes of that game, it was almost the perfect St James's Park performance. The way that we were building out from the back, creating chances, pressing, putting pressure on them. And you did feel like come the 60th, 70th minute of the game, we got that equaliser through Brennan Johnson or the Dan Burn own goal. We were really growing in it. We missed a couple of huge opportunities, and you really thought at that point, that's where you have to go on. And that's where you make a difference in those big games. And if we had scored a winner, I think people would be talking about that performance completely differently, because we were really good for the large majority of that game. And that's positive for me, because when you look at the last 2 performances at St James's Park, they've been a world away from that last season when we got beat 4-0. So that's definitely a positive for me, was sort of the overall way that we played, how we took control of the game for large portions of it. But it's once again those defensive lapses in concentration that cost us. And that you can also say with that is like, we should have won that game. And that's the most frustrating bit about it, is that, those lapses in concentration defensively are costing us so hugely. And I think, like you said, Mickey van der Ven missing probably on the second goal. That doesn't happen if Mickey van der Ven's there. Romero more comfortable on the right-hand side. And that sort of thing does make a big difference. And me and you sort of spoke about it, like you said, on the Monday on the live stream, about how our defence, maybe a little bit of a lack of communication there for the second goal between Dragusin and Romero. So overall, if you're looking at, take the frustration away from it, the game was about a week ago now, so we've had time to cool down. And when you look at the performance overall, for me, it is quite positive, but it's just a shame about the result, and football is a results business, isn't it? So that's what you're always going to take away from it.
Yeah, 100%. What did you make of kind of going through some players individually in terms of, I think, some of the ones that stood out and some of the ones that struggled? What did you make of Radu Dragusin's performance on Sunday? Because he hasn't obviously had many opportunities. I think there's been a lot of Spurs fans that have kind of been calling for him to be placed in the team, whether it's Spurs moving to a 3 at the back, which I kind of want to come on and talk about in a bit. Yeah. Or do we push Romero into midfield to try and accommodate him? It feels like Spurs fans can't really get their head around the concept of having someone who can step in that shows that amount of quality in terms of that performance. Obviously, we kind of alluded to it for the goal. Maybe that lack of sharpness in terms of playing in the system and that lack of minutes maybe did cost him a little bit there. There's been a bit of a debate between whether Romero did the right thing in terms of stepping up, whether he was the one actually holding the line, whether Dragusin just goes with the runner, whether it's... There's been a lot of chat about that goal. And obviously, we spoke about it on Monday, that it's not nice to concede goals like that, because it's, the perception of it in terms of how you see it is it's one pass that's kind of cut through your back line, which isn't ideal. But then again, even the best defences in the league get cut open like that. You look at Arsenal, the goal on Saturday that they conceded, that was one pass through to, I can't remember who it was who had the shot before, João Pedro, that got rebounded in. Saliba and Gabriel.
It was a Dingra, wasn't it?
I think it was a Dingra. Their defence kind of parts in the same way. And it's kind of that, I suppose, with Tottenham, less so than Arsenal, because they were down to 10 men at that point. It's kind of the risk reward in terms of the way that you do you do play, because you're always going to kind of leave those gaps. And we'll come on and talk about a little bit more about what is kind of Tottenham's biggest problem at the moment, and how do we kind of go about solving that. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Dragusin's performance, and also on a couple of players in Christian Romero and Destiny Udogie, because I think it's fair to say that kind of by their own standards, they've not had the best start to the season. Do you think that's more down to, especially with Romero and Udogie, do you think it's more down to that kind of lack of sharpness? Obviously, Romero coming off the back of a tournament summer, Destiny Udogie coming off the back of a big injury, no pre-season. What do you kind of make of their starts to the season, their performance on Sunday, as well as Dragusin?
Yeah, I completely agree with that on Romero and Udogie. I think, Udogie, he's going to take a little while probably to get back up to it physically, to that level physically. I think he was caught a little bit at times, giving away a few silly fouls. I just think it will come for him. I think actually at points last season, Destiny Udogie could be quite frustrating in terms of he made those silly little errors, which you do expect from a young defender in the Premier League. But if there's one player that I have confidence will go on and have a brilliant career at Tottenham Hotspur and a great season this year, it would be Destiny Udogie. I just think he's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And I think he's got everything you need in a modern day fullback. I think Christian Romero, definitely the tournament, coming back late to pre-season, not really having a part in Tottenham's pre-season. I think that will have affected him a bit, just the non-stop nature of his schedule. Obviously, he hasn't really had a break in a long, long time now, Christian Romero, playing international tournaments. So, I think it's difficult for him as well. I think he's actually underrated a bit how difficult the fact of playing for Argentina and flying halfway across the world every international break, how regular those are becoming now. And he's going to come back once again from this international break, probably a little bit fatigued, probably a little bit tired. So I hope they give him a rest over there. But I think you sort of note those two starts to the season down as just, they're growing into the year. It might take them a little while. Maybe Romero needs a break at a certain point. And I do think Dragusin was quite positive, actually, I thought, against Newcastle. Going away to St James's Park in your first Premier League start is a very difficult task. Alexander Isak, I thought he made 2 excellent recovery challenges. Dragusin did. I don't think there's any point in the game where I'd really put any blame on him for either of the goals. I don't really think, I've said it. I think the goal is a lack of communication, a lack of sort of game time together between Dragusin and Romero. And people might say, you got to blame someone for the goal, but I really don't think you do in that situation. I just think Romero's done one thing, which if everyone else does it, you would say is the right thing. Dragusin's done another thing, run back towards goal, which if Romero does that too, the goal probably doesn't happen as well. So it's just one of those frustrating things that, happens between new defensive partnerships. I what did you make of Dragusin's performance? Because I think me and you discussed it briefly on Monday and we sort of had a similar sort of view on the goal, but in terms of his performance overall.
Yeah, I think he looks strong. I do think he looks he's strong. I think he's better on the ball than I thought he was going to be as well. That's kind of one of the things that's encouraged me a little bit. I think we actually saw that towards the end of last season where Udogie was out injured and Ange kind of eventually moved to the back four that a lot of Tottenham fans wanted to see with no Udogie, which was Romero and Dragusin and then Van de Ven playing at left back. I think you saw his ability to kind of stride out there and be good on the ball. We saw some kind of encouraging moments from him defensively towards the back end of last season as well. And I think he kind of did carry that on into this game, obviously because of Romero and Van de Ven's absence throughout pre-season, got a lot of game time there, but again was kind of being chopped and changed in terms of what centre-back he was partnering with, whether it was Gray, whether it was Emerson Royale, whether it was Ben Davis at points throughout pre-season. So again, he's not had the most, settled start in terms of various partners and those kind of things in terms of really establishing himself in the team. But, I think, like you said, I think ironing out those kind of errors with him on the pitch is only going to come with time. And I think with Van de Ven there, because of multiple reasons, you probably don't concede that goal because one, you've got Romero and Van de Ven who are, they're kind of that yin and yang. They are a proper partnership. If one got, they're a right arm and a left arm kind of, so to speak. They know exactly where the other is going to be in terms of positioning. So the offside probably happens in terms of Murphy and Isak, and then the goal doesn't happen. And then failing that, if the flag stays down, then Van de Ven probably gets back to make a recovery challenge. I know that's one of the things you kind of praised Dragusin for, which was, there was one in the second half where it looked a little bit dodgy in terms of the tackle. And if he'd got that slightly more wrong, it probably would have been a penalty kind of coming from the wrong side. But the fact that he was able to show that kind of pace and recovery ability to get back in the first place shows that he can play in this team with that 100%. High line. And we'll go on.
That wasn't a rash challenge either. I think that was more of a sort of one of those ones where it might have been ever so slightly missed time, but I don't think that's enough contact for a penalty. And I think it's more, good on his part getting back there and showing that composure to know when to make that challenge. So yeah, I think that's positive from him too.
Yeah, 100%. He's read the situation really well, which is the most important thing, and he's got back and made the tackle. Sometimes with a defender like him, I think we get so used to kind of seeing Van der Ven and Romero in terms of how elegantly they do things, how kind of elegantly Van der Ven gets back and makes these really clean tackles a lot of the time. Romero, again, is a very clean kind of tackler, a very clean passer of the ball, whereas Dragusin is a little bit more like meat and potatoes, traditional centre-back, where he's not afraid to kind of make things look a bit ugly. So I don't think it wasn't the prettiest, but sometimes you just have to be effective. And I think the Europa League is only going to be a good thing for him. He's obviously going to get a lot of game time there. Like I've had it so many times, and you probably have as well, in terms of when you're making content, talking about Spurs and talking about the back line. And I get comments all the time about Dragusin should be playing, Dragusin should be given a chance. And he's had that chance, and he's ultimately kind of passed, I think, in terms of and he did towards the back end of last season, and he's only going to get more opportunities. So I don't really understand the kind of hastiness to get him in the side, because you're not going to break up Romero and Van der Ven. You're not. And I think people are maybe, criticising Romero fairly in terms of a couple of the goals that we've given away. Certainly the goal against Leicester, where I think it was a kind of lapse in concentration. But I think, like you said, there are reasons for that, in terms of the fact that, he hasn't had a break in a very, very long time. It's a very demanding thing to play for the Argentinian national team like he's done, go all the way in a tournament like that, have no pre-season, have a very long kind of break. It's going to take him a while. But I think what you did see in the game against Everton is that when Spurs are going to dominate kind of possession and complete control of the game for 90 minutes, that's actually where he's at his best, because his on the ball ability shows. The occasional tackle that he has to make, he just times it perfectly. Whereas it's been in a couple of the other games where there have been a few more periods in those games where we have been a little bit more up against it, where maybe that lack of sharpness is kind of showed with Romero. I saw a thing actually earlier on Twitter that he is actually you had to kind of take like who scored ratings with a pinch of salt, right? But he is the top performing centre back in the Premier League so far this season. So I don't think he has been. I don't think he's been. Van der Ven had a better first two games than he did. Obviously, Van der Ven didn't play in the third game. You could argue Dragusin probably had a better game than him on Sunday. But I think, again, to kind of one thing where the Arsenal game might be actually quite beneficial is to really refocus this group in terms of those little sloppy errors that are kind of being made that from players that you don't necessarily expect either. That's kind of been the thing, I guess, with Romero a little bit. A massive game like that to kind of help resharpen and kind of and refocus. One in terms of kind of staying on from the Newcastle game, in terms of going forward, obviously we haven't quite got the results that I don't think our performances have maybe merited, or certainly for large periods of games. The underlying numbers look good for Spurs so far this season. There was a big thread that was kind of put out yesterday in terms of where each team stands kind of at this point in terms of 3 games in. I think there's been a notable difference in terms of the amount of control that we've had in games. We've got the best pressing numbers and the highest amount of turnovers in the Premier League, highest average momentum, whatever that means, highest average possession and press intensity as well. But the kind of most telling statistic that sums up our season so far is our shot conversion rate. We rank 7th lowest in the Premier League for turning possession into shooting opportunities in the Premier League. Liverpool ranked the highest by some distance, if people haven't seen this, with Arsenal, Man City and Brighton behind them. And I think I want to talk about Liverpool as well. In terms of looking at that Liverpool United game, there's a lot to be learned from how clinical they were. But even that kind of comes with time when you look at the experience and quality in that front three and the age profiles of those players, a proven track record of scoring Premier League goals in Jota, Diaz and Salah. There has been a lot of chat, obviously. We kind of talked about it with the goal there at Newcastle in terms of the high line causing us issues. With all of that considered, what do you think is the biggest issue for Spurs at the moment? Do you think it is that lack of ability to convert chances? Because I think that's what's being painted out in the numbers.
Yeah, there's probably 2 big issues for me at the minute, and that's the first one is obviously defending transitions. I think that's been an issue for us for a while, and 100% in terms of like penetrating the box and really creating those, not even necessarily clear-cut opportunities, but generating good chances for Dominic Solanke, our wingers, arriving at the back post, making the most of those sort of crosses that we see so often flash across the area. The Brennan Johnson one that's obviously doing the rounds on Twitter, or has done the rounds on Twitter about that. We spoke about that on Monday, and I think that that definitely is an issue for us. And I think, but I really do feel as though a lot of that will get a lot better quickly with Dominic Solanke back in the fold. I think he allows James Maddison to have that that front man to play off. He can fire it into Dom Solanke, play around him. Solanke, provides an option for Brennan Johnson, Son, Kulusevski to cross the ball into the box. I think without that number 9 in there, Kulusevski struggled a little bit against Newcastle to really have an effect in the penalty area. I thought he was decent in terms of when he dropped a little bit deeper, but in the penalty area, I thought the wingers didn't have anyone to hit.
Yeah.
And I just think when Solanke comes back in, or even a Richarlison, if he, recovers from his injury as well, and when Solanke's not available, if we have that target man in there, like we saw last season when Richarlison was in the team, that all of a sudden solves quite a few of our issues. Because if you think about Man City, for example, if they didn't have Erling Haaland, then the picture suddenly looks a little bit different for them. If you think about maybe Arsenal, if they don't have Kai Havertz and they've got a Gabriel Jesus there, who's maybe some people prefer him out wide, and he's not as much of a player who will run in behind and get on the end of those opportunities. So I think it affects every team not having that number 9. I think it's really, really affected Spurs against Newcastle in that game. And I think that's led to a lot of frustration for our wingers, for James Maddison, for example, because it is just a lot more difficult because, the striker is always going to get the most chances and hopefully take centre-halves away from the wingers to get opportunities, and James Maddison, like I mentioned. So, yeah, that's probably is our biggest issue right now, because defending transitions, even though it is an issue, I don't feel like if we take our chances, that will be as big of an issue for us this season if we concede a goal or two in a game. If we've taken the chances that our dominance shows we should have, then hopefully that sort of balances itself out and we can just win every game 4-2 each week and all be happy and play lovely football. So
yeah, that would be perfect. I put a tweet out yesterday because someone sort of sarcastically made a comment about Manchester City's high line and said that where was it? Here we go. Here it was a screenshot of when Man City were 2-1 up against West Ham. And I think Kudus hit the post from this chance. I think it was in the second half. And the tweet said, "Here is how we see top teams defend, not naively getting exposed on the break like Angeball." Rico Lewis is the only player in Manchester City's half at that point when it comes to defending that transition. And West Ham have got a brilliant counter-attack opportunity on. So I guess the point of my kind of point on this, and kind of you said it there as well, if you want to play, and when you're looking at that Liverpool game, we can learn a lot from Liverpool, but we can also learn a lot from Manchester United in the sense that United have tried to press Liverpool really high up the pitch in this game.
Yeah.
But where the defensive line is so deep, they're allowing so much space in midfield and then conceding a lot of quality chances that way as well. Yeah. Naturally, when you do play with a high line like Aston Villa do, Emery has coached that high line really, really well. And I think Spurs, for the most part, under Ange, that has been coached really well when we have our proper defence available. Obviously, we do rely on Van de Ven quite a lot for that in terms of the recovery pace.
Yeah.
But the difference is, when you look at Manchester City, they can allow themselves to leave themselves exposed like that because they have those killers up front that will put the chances away when they come to and make chances out of nothing for themselves as well, which I feel like that is something we're struggling a little bit with at the moment as well, with certain individual players. Obviously, it's really hard to compare anyone that we've got to Erling Haaland because he is the best striker. But when you look at even the chance that he got for that, or even the goal that he scored, I think the second goal against West Ham on Saturday, he kind of makes that chance for himself. He's the one that shifted it out of his feet. It's not like he's always relying. I saw you make a TikTok video about this in terms of like him, service striker. City will have players, regardless of where they play on the pitch in that front third, that will make chances for themselves. They don't need to rely on this kind of quality level of chance creation where we're kind of used to under Pep Guardiola, where it's like work it to the byline, cut it back, and we will score. We will convert high XG chances, which is something that Ange's kind of game was based on at Celtic as well. There are a lot of parallels and comparisons to the way that Ange sets up to what Guardiola, how he sets up in terms of that final third play. And we'll come on and talk about that because I've got a question about that as well. You can't. I guess what I'm saying is, in terms of that risk reward that I come back to, you can't. In terms of the high. It, but I think that's such a basic kind of lazy way to look at it, and I do think it's a lot more down to that level of chance creation. I think those statistics are so super telling because when you look at how far down we are in terms of shot conversion ranked to those other sides, Liverpool, like I said, it's hard to compare us to Liverpool because I know it's a new. People will say, "Well, how has Arne Slot been able to do this so quickly? Why are we struggling to do it?" Look at their front three compared to ours. And I know we've got Sonny who will, stick chances away for fun. We've had no Solanke for the last couple of games. And I think we are still missing something in terms of that final third with that, whether it's that winger or that number 10 that is going to be that bit of a maverick that will create things for themselves or, take players out of the game. That decision-making isn't quite there for Spurs at the moment. But I think you're right. I think that's the biggest issue for me. The biggest issue is not the defence and it's not the high line. It's just we're not creating enough quality chances. And I can understand why people would say, well, maybe we're not creating enough quality chances to kind of justify continue playing in this manner if it's going to leave us that vulnerable at the back.
Yeah.
But I think it's still a process, and it's still, like you said, I do think these things will be rectified quite quickly once Solanke comes back into the side, not just because you can trust him to score goals, because of what he adds to the overall kind of dimension of the attack. And I think even someone like Wilson Odobert gives us a little bit of a different dimension, but he's still very young. He's not going to be that fully fledged killer that we want him to be in the final third at the moment. These things are going to take that little bit of time. And I can, I want to come on to talk about Eze actually, because in terms of adding that star quality in the final third, obviously that was a player that we kind of missed out on in the summer. His release clause is going to be reactivated next summer. Yeah. Do you think Spurs should go back? Do you think in terms of you saw the goal that he scored against Chelsea on Sunday? The frustrating thing for me is that we kind of have players capable of that, and it's hard to kind of compare him to someone like James Maddison, because Maddison also had chances from outside the box where he had a shot tipped over the bar, etc. Maddison has got that kind of in his locker as well. But I think what Eze does, he's that kind of player that we're kind of we spoke about this on Monday in terms of James Maddison, in terms of someone that will, in terms of grabbing games by the scruff of the necks and having big moments in big games. I feel like that's something that we're still missing at the moment. We haven't really seen enough from him. Obviously, Steve Parish said that he was astounded that clubs kind of didn't show as much interest as he thought. Do you think that's something that Spurs should look to go back in? He's someone that Spurs should look to go back in for next summer, or do you think that ship has sailed?
I think it all depends on James Maddison's form this season, because I think if we're going to go and sign Eze, I think for me it would probably be as a James Maddison replacement. I don't see him as a left winger in this Ange Postecoglou system, especially. I see him, if he does come in, playing centrally and challenging James Maddison for that spot. I sort of, as well, if James Maddison does have a good season, how is Dejan Kulusevski doing? We could get to a situation with Dejan Kulusevski where he doesn't fit in as a winger in Ange Postecoglou's system. Ange clearly doesn't see him as his first choice right winger anymore. He's playing as a sort of backup to James Maddison. They play with two number 10s sometimes. If Kulusevski might be getting a little bit frustrated, he wants to be a starting number 10 for a club, because I think he has the ability to do that, absolutely. Maybe, I don't know, we could, because I think Eze is more of a midfielder than Dejan Kulusevski. I think Kulu is really an out-and-out number 10, can play off the striker. And I think Eze could potentially play in one of those, left or right side in number 8 roles for Spurs. But I think it all depends on how our squad looks next summer. I heard something about them renegotiating the release clause down to about £50 million, £45 million, like they had with Elise. So, because Eze's now stayed for probably, I'd say Eze's probably stayed for 2 years longer than he could have done at Crystal Palace. At definitely a year longer, because he definitely could have left this summer. So it's one of those where if the price is right, if our squad is in need of that real star quality, if James Maddison is still not providing that for us, then I would definitely be looking at Eze as that option. But I think would he be 26, 27 next summer as well? So I do definitely think
27,
so I do definitely think it all really depends on James Maddison, because James Maddison could have a fantastic season. Kulusevski could get plenty of game time. We could be looking at those two as our number 10s for the facility, and we'll want to use those funds in other places, because I've got a nasty feeling that one of our centre halves might be pushing for an exit next summer. So I think we'll have lots of issues to deal with next summer. That I think, depends on Maddison, depends on Kulusevski, and how that number 10 role is sort of looking for Spurs.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. One thing sort of off the back of that as well, I think on in terms of the finances of it, I'm sure I saw something as well that they would be willing to negotiate under the clause, or the kind of the terms of the payment structure for the clause this time around, to facilitate his ambitions, I think was the word. The words that were used. And obviously, again, like, people were kind of getting a bit pissy about the fact that we didn't sign him. I've seen it. We're going to kind of come on and talk about the negativity surrounding Spurs at the moment, and this idea of like false promises throughout the transfer window, and fans almost feel like they're being gaslit a little bit into thinking that we were going to sign these players, even though Just
It's funny because they convince themselves of it. Somebody will get the idea in their head, oh, I really want to sign this player. We'll see a few rumours from maybe not tier one journalists linking them, and all of a sudden, why have we not signed Eze? That's it. We don't even know what's going on behind
it's like we're being lied to. It's like I've seen a lot of that, like from certain sections of just like we've been lied to all summer. We've been strung along by these journalists that kind of have one foot in the door at the club and are trying to feed out. It's just like I saw a tweet the other day. I'll save that for a bit when it comes to talking about the cynicism and negativity around certain people and certain journalists, especially. A lot of people going for Alice to go, which we're not having on this podcast.
Mate, don't come on my boy Ali, absolute goat.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
don't come on my boy Ali.
Yeah.
So in terms of those two number 10s, then you spoke about that with like Maddison and Kulusevski. Jack Enoch Out, who's also sent in a question, which we'll come to. He tweeted me yesterday. I remember I made a video about this a long time ago on TikTok, talking about Dejan Kulusevski and how best to kind of get him in the system, and how sort of signing a proper number 6 almost unlocks the best ability of him because it allows you to maybe shape up in a different way. A little bit like Manchester City. He tweeted me, which is kind of ironic in terms of the whole idea of copying Pep. But he tweeted me and said,
"Oh yeah, I watched your video on this."
Yeah. He said just thoughts on us just copying Pep and going for a 3-2-4-1 with Romero, Dragusin, and Van de Ven as the 3 centre backs, Porro and Basuma in midfield, Johnson, Decky, Maddison, and Son, and then Solanke through the middle. One of the reasons that I thought, kind of going back to Eze a little bit, one, I think if Spurs did ever adopt this system in terms of playing those two number 10s, I think he'd be absolutely perfect. And that's why I did think, and maybe again City were put off by the finances of it a little bit, which is again an argument against kind of throwing your toys out the pram about the fact that we didn't sign him. Because if they didn't, that probably, or Liverpool didn't, or Arsenal didn't, or whoever, probably shows you that it probably wasn't, it was a no-go for Spurs as well in terms of getting that. Because I believe, I
think people, because I think it was 65 million up front. Yeah. And I think people underestimate sometimes how much paying a huge chunk of the fee up front, or 100% of the fee up front, that really changes the deal. Because normally Spurs will structure deals over 3, 4, 5 year periods where we pay a chunk of the
club
fee.
does as well, right? Every club does.
Exactly.
And also, like you saw it with Solanke, that there was a bit of flexibility there. I think we paid 30 million up front for Solanke. The rest of it staggered. Even 30 million up front is quite a lot of money to part ways.
It's a lot of money, yeah.
But I think with Eze, the difficulty around Eze was the fact that they'd already lost Elise. It looked like they were going to potentially lose Mark Gahey. Palace had every right to sort of turn around and say, well, this is the structure of the clause. If you want him, we'll let him go, but you have to pay it that way. Also, when I did the overlap, I was speaking to Dan, HLTCO, obviously a massive Palace fan.
Yeah.
He was saying that, and I remember someone saying this before, that it wasn't just the buyout clause, there was also a sell-on clause to QPR, which had to be paid up front in full by the buying club. So they had a sell-on clause. So QPR would get a 20% of whatever fee that Palace would get for Eze. Or something like that. It might have been 10, 15%. But when you're talking about 65 million, it's a decent amount of money for especially a championship side. I think what he was saying was that it had to be paid up front by the buying club. So Spurs, rather than Spurs paying the money for Eze and then Crystal Palace paying the sell-on clause to QPR, that sell-on clause would have had to been paid up front by Spurs. So that made it, or whoever came in for him. So that made it even more complicated.
Yeah.
But in terms of that formation, then that's one of the reasons why, like I said, I'm surprised that City didn't pull the trigger, because when you think about the way they set up, even if you've got Eze off the left in that kind of Grealish role, or in behind Haaland as one of those 2 10s, I think he'd do that so well. But for Spurs, if that is something that over time, in terms of Ange's evolution, we look to do, because we've got 3 really good centre-backs, if, like you said, we're able to keep them at the club next summer with Romero or Van de Ven, do you think that's something that, one, could you see us doing that? And 2, do you think that, because I think that would suit us really, really nicely. But do you see that as a viable option for Spurs? Do you think that's something we might do?
100%. I don't know how dissimilar that is to how we already sort of play in possession, in terms of
that is true.
Porro inverting, pushing up the pitch a little bit more. It sort of becomes more of a back 3, or definitely a back 2 at times as well, with Romero and Van de Ven sat there with Bissouma in midfield, with maybe Porro next to him. And then Pap Sarr does like to get quite high up the pitch, or Bentancur and James Maddison. And we've got 2 wide players with Solanke up front. So I think it's sort of quite similar to the way we play already, which would obviously make the implementation phase of that a lot easier, I think. I don't know, whether it would be a massive change for Spurs, I'm not sure. I think maybe it looks like on paper compared to how we line up on paper, it looks like maybe a bigger change than it would actually be on the pitch. But yeah, it's definitely a cool idea, and I definitely think that would suit somebody like a Dejan Kulusevski. But I think to play that system properly and properly have that one sitter with the inverted fullback, and then Porro at points likes to overlap as well. You need that dominant number 6, and it's me and you discussed at the start of the summer transfer window. I thought it was so key for us at the start of the window. I thought it became less and less key for us as the window went on, because we can get by with what we've got there, and we will get by with what we've got there. But if you look at Rodri, if you look at even my dream signing that last summer was João Paulinho, but obviously he went to Bayern very early on. And I just think those dominant number 6s allow you to do so much with that midfield and allow you to do, so much with your team. I mean, Pep Guardiola can do whatever he wants because he's got Rodri in there. I really feel like Rodri is that key for City. As we've seen so many times when he's out of that team, they perform so much worse, to a way worse level. It's their win percentage without him in the team is 40% compared to 75, 80% with him in the team. So it's crazy. And I just don't think Bissouma is the player who gives us that protection. I don't think Bentancur will be that player in that position either. So I think that will definitely make it a lot more difficult for Spurs. And I do think, especially in that defensive set, we do need someone sat in there next to Bissouma, or maybe not even sat there, but at least giving him some sort of protection in there. So yeah, I think it's, in the attacking phase of play, it could definitely be something we look to go more towards if he wants Pedro Porro consistently just inverting. Because I think, City have a Kanji or John Stones who normally do that role. I know Rico Lewis is now doing it now, which is very, very exciting. But Pedro Porro, I feel like his role's a lot more varied at Spurs right now, which is probably the main difference between how we play and how City plays, that Pedro Porro also likes to overlap a lot. He probably overlaps more than he inverts, I'd say, at this point. So yeah, I do. It's definitely a really interesting idea, and I'd love to hear somebody like Ange Postecoglou speak about that and speak about the sort of differences that would mean for his team. But yeah, it's definitely a cool idea.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to do questions at the end, but Jack actually asked another question for the pod saying, should we consider going to just one inverted fullback / none at all might be a solution to stopping counters, and having our fullbacks in wide areas would allow them to put more crosses in the front three, and two front the midfield can get into the box. So those kind of 2 number 10s and that 3 up front. I remember seeing there was that picture that went round after the Everton game that I think Rob Daly, the club commentator, took of the structure in possession for Spurs. And I think JLA reposted it as well. And it was this is what Angeball is. And it's like you said, in terms of the structure, it's not too different, except for the fact that it's just a Doggy and Porro are kind of both very much inverted. Other than that, if you had one of those, if you took a Doggy out and placed Dragusin in there, Van de Ven kind of gets that bit further up the pitch. It would probably look a little bit like that as well. But Van de Ven just gives you that bit more security coming back the other way. Like you said, I don't think it's too much of an adjustment. I don't. And maybe it's one of those things where it takes, I'd love to know. And again, I really don't wish this, but if we last season when a Doggy got injured, when Ange eventually did go to that, the back 4 of having Van de Ven out left back and Romero and Dragusin there, I'd be fascinated to know if a Doggy got another injury, what that team would actually look like now with a striker. Because when we were doing that, we were playing with a false 9 towards the back end of the season. It was that Man City game at home. I remember it was almost Pap Sarr was playing as the false 9. Maddison was playing as the false 9. Kulusevski, when he came on, was playing as the false 9. Then he started against Sheffield United. So I'd love to know if he took a Doggy out or a Doggy got injured for whatever reason. I think he probably would go with Van de Ven at left back, and I think we'd almost see a bit of a structure more similar to Man City's in that moment if we actually had Solanke towards the back end of last season, or if we had to do it this season. So I think you're right. I don't think it's too different. How we spoke about this on Monday in terms of the 2 number 10s, and I suggested that it might be one of those where we just go fuck it and do it against Arsenal. You were kind of against that. What do you think? It just leaves us to, again, it kind of is it kind of comes back to the point that you already made, I suppose, about you really kind of need that dominant number 6 if you're able to kind of play like that. So I suppose it's probably a bit of a no-go. But would you be, if it got to what time's the game on next Sunday? 1:30, and it got to 12:15 and they released the team news now, and you saw that Spurs had gone like that. with 2 number 10s against Arsenal, would you be nervous, or would you think, fuck me, let's go for it? Would you be excited by the prospect of that, or would you be
I'll be
nervous?
shitting myself.
Would you? I
I
think I'd be quite excited, but in the back of my mind, I think I would be naturally like, okay, right, that was going to work.
It would be exciting, and I think it would be incredibly interesting to see how that could work. I think if Declan Rice was there, it's a completely different story, and we definitely don't do that. But I think the player that I always look at with Arsenal is Martin Odegaard. I just think everything goes through him. I think he's their best player. I think he's absolutely brilliant. I think it's so good. I know there's some things going around about him at the minute about, he's got no goal assists since April, I believe it is, or something like that.
Yeah,
and
I've seen a few Arsenal fans. I saw a tweet from an Arsenal guy that I follow earlier saying that, like, I think it was MJ was like saying, what has happened to this? Like, where has this Martin Odegaard kind of hate come from? It feels like I don't know, like certain portions of their fan base are starting to be like read too much into the. He's so keen to the way they play. So good.
Oh mate, it's all the simple things that he does as well. When he's on the ball, he's always 1 or 2 touch. He keeps things moving quickly. I think, when you look at the space that Bukayo Saka picks the ball up in, Martinelli, Trossard on the left-hand side, a lot of that is just due to Odegaard's efficiency. And I think the little pockets of space that he finds, the way he drifts about the pitch in between the lines, I think if Yves Bissouma was in there by himself, sat in there by himself, I think that causes him a world of trouble. I think that causes him trouble anyway. I think Bissouma, if he's got maybe Sarr in there or Bentancur, who I would personally start, I think if he's got Bentancur sat in there with him, obviously got the license to go forward in possession, but out of possession in there with him, I think you say to Bissouma, right, Odegaard likes to play in that sort of right-hand channel. I think most of the time he picks the ball up in those sort of areas. Obviously, he drifts about the pitch, but if Bissouma's patrolling that area, I think if Bissouma can get a little bit tighter to him, maybe if he can, use his physicality as an advantage in that battle, I think that's how he'd have the best chance possible coming out on top. And that would be my main concern with the sort of 2 number 10s is what happens with the Martin Odegaard, then how do we contain that threat with Arsenal? I think Sarr could be really important in this sort of game. This is the exciting thing that I think about Spurs is when you're looking at this team now, you're not just thinking like it was in the Conte days, the Mourinho days, right, that's our best starting 11. Obviously, there's always going to be a little bit of a debate about 2 or 3 positions, but we've got our settled back forward. The midfield, we've got a lot of different options that we can go with. In the attack, we've got lots of different options we can go with as well at the minute. And I think that's the most exciting thing. Do you play Sarr, Bentancur? Do you chuck something like Bergvall in there, like you said, with the 2 number 10s with Kulusevski in there? I think I'd personally go Bentancur and then have Maddison in the number 10. I think that would be a really effective midfield, especially against Partey and Jorginho, if that's the 2 that they play in there, or if Havertz drops back. But yeah, I think the 2 10s in possession would be very, very exciting. And I think Kulusevski and Maddison would give Partey and Jorginho a world of trouble. And I think from that point of view, very, very good. But just in terms of containing Odegaard and dealing with that threat, I think I'd definitely go with a sitter as well in there next to Bissouma to, hopefully win that midfield battle for us at home, which will be obviously the most important battle in pretty much every game. But I think especially in the North London derby to kind of gain control, who has more of the ball. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking back while you were saying that to the game, both games against Arsenal last year. Obviously, the away game he went with Bissouma, Sarr, and Maddison. Obviously, Bissouma had a brilliant game in that one. He dropped Bissouma for the home game, and it was Højbjerg, Bentancur, and Maddison that he went with. He took Bentancur off at half time and brought on. I can't remember who he actually brought on to replace him.
I remember being absolutely raging at that.
I think it was Sarr. Yeah, I was as well. It didn't make sense. And he obviously went with Højbjerg at the start, which shows you that maybe he was, and I think their midfield was Rice, Partey, and Odegaard in that one. I do think, like you say, I think that he's obviously not going to drop Bissouma for this one because I think that was due to a form thing at the time. But I do think, obviously, he obviously saw something in Bentancur to go with him ahead of Sarr in that kind of role in the derby at home last year. And obviously went with Maddison. Obviously, it was Werner on the left that time. Obviously, I think he was subbed off after like half an hour with an injury. And Sonny through the middle and Kulusevski on the right. I think the key thing as well is that we're going to have a doggy up against Davis this time, up against Saka, this time, rather than Ben Davis. So there's a lot of differences. It's a very different dynamic kind of coming into this fixture rather than at that point last year. I want to talk about just while we're kind of on the tactical aspect of things. Did you see that? Do you think that other fans actually watch Spurs or like watch us properly? Because I saw, and we were talking about this before we started, that thread from that EBL account on Twitter that talked about us being reliant on dribbling to break the press. And there's obviously so much, like, it's kind of coming back to the high line. Do Do you think there's just like I just feel like there is such lazy perception of Tottenham, and like
Yeah,
we already spoke about it with the highline in terms of people just going like, oh, just fucking get rid of it. Like that's how we're going to stop conceding goals. Blah 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 blah. Again, I think it comes back to like I don't think people actually really watch how we fully play, and I do think hopefully when things start to kind of click again, I do think we'll surprise quite a few teams. I do think we'll surprise people. It's just I do worry, and we're going to come and talk about that in terms of the amount of games we've got coming up. Maybe we're going to let ourselves down in terms of not investing as much into the squad depth. But I think and that's what I mean. Going into that Arsenal game, I do think we can surprise teams. I do think this is kind of like not necessarily from other clubs. I don't think Arsenal are going to be lazy in terms of the way they analyse Tottenham going into that game. And of course, they're going to have everything kind of figured out. But I do think from an outside perspective, I think a lot of the analysis, I found this up for a while under Ange, like the analysis is incredibly lazy.
Do you not just find it so patronising as well?
Yeah,
I find it the most patronising thing ever how people talk about Spurs. And I think, nobody knows.
It's got worse as well since Ange. Like,
100. No, but
because Don't go on,
I was talking under Ange, like, especially the start of the season. I found it. Oh, Spurs are so they're really good to watch for the neutral and stuff, but they're not very good. They're going to finish like 7th or 8th. I just find it really patronising how people talk about Spurs at the minute. It's like, well, no, we actually are building something quite serious, I think, and it is exciting. I think, Ange Postecoglou is not just this manager who's we're going to play lovely football, guys, but we don't want to do much. Like, he's the complete opposite to that. And the issues that we have will be frustrating nobody more than it'll be frustrating Ange. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing that's annoying me a little bit. And I think, nobody knows their own team better than that own fan base, I think. And, regardless of the extreme opinions some people have or, other opinions people have, their fans know the team best. I mean, if me and you were at the games, watching on TV very intently, making content articles, reviewing the game, just like, I'd like to think that people like me and you and every other Tottenham fan have a much better understanding of our issues, across a whole 90-minute game than so. These people who do the threads on Twitter and stuff, like, they probably just pick apart little bits of the game. They didn't watch it in the actual, live maybe, and it's a bit more, they're looking at it from an outside point of view coming in, and I find it all very patronising. I think, it's like, Spurs are nice, but they're not really going anywhere. They've got such major flaws, and it's like, I don't think our flaws are as big as people are making them out to be. I think, we got a few things that really do need to improve. I think the set pieces have improved at the start of this season. Time will tell with that. The Arsenal game will be big for that as well. We got Dominic Solanke, who's only started one game this season, and he got injured early on in that game and then played through with that injury for the rest of it. We didn't have Mickey van der Ven in our first big test against Newcastle. Didn't have Solanke or Richarlison. And look, these things happen. Injuries happen to clubs. But, yeah, I feel like our issues aren't as big as these people try and make out a lot of the time. And I think, when I look at it, I'm looking at this upcoming run of games and thinking that is so exciting for us to just go into head first with our starting 11 and just really attack those games. And hopefully we can prove a lot of people wrong, like you said, because I completely agree with you. I think we will surprise people with how good we can be at points this season. And I think, you look at Arteta and the project he had there and how long it took him to really get that clicking. I know he inherited a worse squad, definitely, but yeah, I don't think it's not a simple, straightforward process, and we are going to surprise a few people this season, especially how they've been talking about us at the start of this year. I love Jamie Carragher, by the way, and he's my favourite pundit in the game. I think he's excellent, but it kind of frustrates me how he's been talking about Spurs at the start of this season as well. I just feel like it's very he just sort of he's quite dismissive about Spurs, and everyone's quite dismissive about Spurs, and that is what
and Solanke as well. Like I found that like on the like when I was doing the overlap and like the analysis of Solanke on Monday Night Football in the first game of the season, I do think it's all a little bit, like you said, I do find it all a little bit patronising, and I think it's like this whole thing of like, naturally, I want to talk about this now actually, because like I feel like it's even, you said there, I don't think our flaws are as major as other people are making out. I don't even think they're as major as our own fan base is making out, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of that negativity comes from inside. And do you think I feel like there's certain sections of this fan base that are kind of ramming the idea down people's throats that the club is divided, the fan base is divided. Obviously, when you look at things in the cold light of day in terms of numbers and facts, like we've won 3 away games in our last 15 away games, which is not good. Yeah. We've kept 4 clean sheets in the last 32 games. Our win record in that time generally isn't the best. I think we've won 13 out of the last 30. I think maybe that I'm not might be wrong.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of these facts are kind of being used to peddle negative kind of narratives against the manager and the board as well. When in reality, if you open your eyes, you can see what's happening on the pitch, that things are there, like there is something there. It's just not quite clicking in the way that we want to look, because we've already seen it. I think if it's hard, because I think if last season didn't start off in such a positive way, where actually a lot of these people who are being this negative now, if you rewind a year or 10 months maybe in terms of the run to the end of October last year, weren't saying a lot of these things. And I think maybe, look, everyone within their right mind got caught up in kind of the fever of Angeball last year because it was so fun. But I think for some people, I think they've completely switched off, and I think this just isn't working at all. And I think they're kind of creating this narrative that the fan base is super divided when it comes to the team. Do you think it is as divided as it's being kind of made out, with agendas being pushed by certain sections of the fan base? Because I think if you ask most people that go to the games or like watch the games, the kind of almost the silent majority who don't necessarily have a platform, like me or you or some of these other people. And I feel like, again, we're kind of on the positive side of it, who do just see like you. And one thing I do find really frustrating is that I feel like a lot of these people who kind of peddle these narratives refuse to acknowledge that people who are positive don't acknowledge the negatives. Like we do. We do all see that. And I think they're trying to create this divide that actually isn't really there. Do you think it's as divided as people are making out? Because I really don't.
I think it's very divided over the ownership, and I think it has been for a long time. I think people get that mistaken with being divided over our team and our results and what we want to happen on the pitch. And I think, I didn't get the opportunity to go to as many games last season as I normally do or as I'd like to do. I think, I was at the Everton game at the start of this year, and just being in the stadium, you really feel a different atmosphere there.
100%.
Like, all the people around me, because I've got my ticket on exchange, so lots of season ticket holders around me saying hi to each other, being really positive about the season. Everyone around me was genuinely very positive before the game had even kicked off, after a fairly poor result on the Monday against Leicester. And I think if you go to the stadium, I think, this will ring true with every fan who, attends games regularly, is that, the atmosphere in the stadium normally is a lot more positive. Even when it's going badly and it's a negative atmosphere in the stadium, that's always still better than it is on Twitter or on social media, which is just an absolute pit of depression at points.
Yeah. And think back to the Chelsea game. Like, I know, again, it was kind of at the height of the fever of Angeball, but like we were 4-1 down, and our fans were,
we were loving it.
It was incredible. So again, it's kind of it's in a different context now. We've moved on from that, but yeah, I agree. Like, from the most part, like speaking to people, and it'll be different before the North London derby, because we could have won the first 3 games of the season playing really well, but we could have easily lost the first 3 games of the season and been playing shit. But that anxiety in the ground is going to be the same either way.
Yeah, 100%.
Like last year I thought the derby at home last year, bear in mind we've been on a poor run of results kind of going into that, off the back of Newcastle, I'm pretty sure as well. The atmosphere was great, and like everyone was proper up for it, and it was like we can go and take these on, and obviously it didn't quite pan out that way. But I think
it was for the entirety of last season. I think, the games that I attended, I went to a few at the end of the year, and like even then, when we were on a really bad run, we didn't have a chance to get in the top 4. We had an outside shot to get in the top 4. It was still very positive. I think you'd struggle to meet one person if you went to a game that was Ange out, or that didn't think Ange Postecoglou had a future at Tottenham, or that thought our team was crap, or thought we didn't have any potential and any talent. And I think that's a different story too in the past at Spurs. I think, in the Conte days, in the Mourinho days, by this point, by past a year in, there was already so much negativity around it. And I think you made a good point. People always tell me and you that we're these positive people who won't acknowledge the bad stuff. And it's like, well, actually, in my group of friends, the Spurs fans that I know, my dad, when he's watching Spurs, for example, I'm actually quite a lot more positive than they are sometimes. And I think, we acknowledge the negatives and we acknowledge the positives. I just prefer, as a football fan, to have a little bit more of a positive outlook on things, because that's just a more enjoyable way to enjoy football. And I think it's the vocal minority on social media that always have the loudest voice, because they come at people like you, they come at people like me, they come at people with bigger platforms who, say good things about Spurs and want to be positive about it. And you do tend to find those people, get the most traction. But, in terms of actually taking them seriously, I think very few people do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they're like you said, I think there is this, there is this divide about the ownership, which I don't comment on a lot, because I just want to I'm not ignoring it, but a lot of the time I just want to focus on the football because at the end of the day, there's a lot about the ownership that we can't change.
Exactly. What can we do?
People have tried protesting. A lot of these similar people have tried protesting. And I respect people for that. I totally do. And there was a time a few years ago where I was more leaning towards getting rid of Levy and ENIC out and all this kind of stuff. But I just want to be able to focus on. And the thing is, it is hard because the test will come next summer when that's the summer where there are simply no excuses to back this manager. This summer, I think Ange came out and said that he acknowledged that he feels like he has been backed. I think, again, I wanted to talk about, like, we sort of alluded to it earlier in terms of the cynicism around certain voices within the Spurs community, like people like Alistair Gold. Paul O'Keefe's been copping a lot of flack recently for kind of being viewed as like a mouthpiece for the club and all this kind of stuff, when he has made it very clear that he thinks that the decision-making at the top level from Spurs has been poor for a long time. Again, Alistair Gold. I saw someone tweet the other day. Alistair Gold published an article about, or a piece on Football London about Will Lancashire and Mikey Moore, saying that after the international break, they feel it feels like they're going to get chances and all this kind of stuff. And someone was like, "Oh, here we go, typical. This is all being fed out by the club to get fans back on side after a defeat." It's like, really? Like Ange said himself in the press conference pre-Newcastle on Friday that the reason that they are here and some of the other players are not here is because they're going to get given opportunities. And it's like, oh, if Lancashire was really, he's like, one, he was injured. I think we all acknowledge that we obviously want to see Mikey Moore on the bench instead of Timo Werner, probably. We all acknowledge that as a fan base, right? But some of these things we can't control. And I trust what they're doing. Whether that makes makes me a happy clapper that just wants to back everything that the club do and what Levy does, whatever. I don't care. Like, there obviously is a plan in place for someone like him, just because he's not been on the bench for the first few games of the season. And I love Mikey Moore. I think he genuinely could be a proper generational talent for Spurs. I genuinely believe that. But are you telling me that he would have come on against Newcastle and definitely 100% made a difference in that game? It's so hard to say. It's really hard to say at this level when he's only 17. So I just think I don't understand. Like, I think people get too wrapped up in their own kind of biases and own agendas. And I think that works both ways in terms of positivity and negativity. But going after people like Alistair Gold and that for writing things about the club and saying about how Alistair Gold as well has been critical multiple times about the decision making. That I remember watching Alistair Gold's YouTube videos in the summer that we tried to hire Conte, failed to hire Conte.
So funny you say that. I literally watched that video. I went on his channel this morning and I literally watched his top viewed video, which was when Spurs didn't get Conte the first time.
Yeah.
Mate, I mean,
he's a broken man.
Yeah.
He's a because above all, he's a fan as well. He's a Tottenham fan. It's like he gets as frustrated just because he's got this kind of like a bit of a funny relationship with Postecoglou that comes across in press conferences sometimes that he's referred to, just because he gets good access to the club. It's because he's a hard-working journalist that writes things that are actually credible and
seems like a lovely bloke. He really does.
Exactly. And I don't understand why. I don't know. People get. I think people are like.
People are jealous. He's got the dream job. People are just jealous of him.
He has. Do you think he wants to be fucking making videos about like?
Literally.
How are we going to end up with Gattuso as our manager? Do you think he wants to be doing stuff like that? Do you think we want to go through that? It's like there is this weird level of cynicism towards people like that.
Well, I saw people coming at you on Twitter the other day. I told that guy to shut the fuck up because
apparently I'm going to wear my T-shirt saying that Ben Bowman is the a disease to the Spurs community. He hasn't actually.
I see stuff like that. It actually winds me up a bit because it's like. What someone actually making good of their platform and actually growing, and people are just going to be jealous. And you've grown quite a lot on Twitter recently, and people are just going to sort of look at that, be jealous of it because that's what they want to do. Ultimately, that's what these people who are driving these nonsense agendas and replying to everyone and saying all this stuff. That's what they want at the end of the day.
The thing is, it's funny because I replied to that guy and then he never said anything. He never replied again.
Yeah.
Never replied. And I was like, one thing I would say to that guy is hold that and hold the L ratio because. I think his tweet got about 5 likes, and I am going to stoop to that level. I am going to stoop to that level and say you got ratioed, bro.
Well, mate, I ratioed him.
you did. I did. You did. I think everybody I think there were replies to the tweet with more likes than his original tweet. So it's just stuff like that. It's like, and do you know what's really funny about things like that? And I don't want to go into this too much because of like I don't want to name names. I hate getting caught up in this kind of shit. But like some of the people that would turn around and say that I've had so much abuse because of like the backlash to something I've said about someone else. that tweet was off the back of someone tweeting about me saying negative stuff, and it's like you're causing a pile-on towards people that are being positive, but then you're crying when people do it to you and saying that I'm getting all this abuse and stuff. It's just pathetic.
They're pathetic. I also wanted to give a shout out to Simon on Twitter, mate. Literally the driver behind all the positivity.
Simon, you mean?
Yeah, mate. He's quality. I love him. Shout out to him.
Actually, Simon is one of the reasons why my Twitter following grew quite a fair bit, because he a while ago he actually shouted me out and was like, if you want to like listen to some more positive voices in this community.
Yeah, I saw.
Like there's been a lot of that like recently, which is really good. Like over the course of the last few days of just like, here are some people that you should actually fucking listen to if like, you know, you just don't want to like, you just want to get, you know, calm takes, which is
100%.
Which is nice. But yeah, I don't think it's as, I think you're right. I think it's the ownership 100%, but I think in terms of the football, I don't think it's anywhere near as divided as people.
No, it's not. I don't think it is. No, especially not in the ground.
No,
which
exactly.
is the most important thing.
But then again, we could be having a very different conversation in 8 games' time, because our next 8 games are Arsenal at home, Coventry away, Brentford at home, Qarabag at home, Man United away, Ferencváros away, which I'm kind of hoping to go to because it's in Budapest.
That'd be sick. That'd be so
good. Brighton away, and then West Ham at home. I did a TikTok on this last night. How many games out of that run do you think we win? Arsenal, Coventry, Brentford.
I'm getting them up now. Arsenal, I think we draw. I've said, but I think we're going to draw that game.
Agreed.
I think we beat Coventry. I think we beat Brentford at home. I think we beat Qarabag at home. I think we beat United away. I don't know why.
We should beat United away. I wanted to talk about this as well in terms of Liverpool, in terms of like what we said about if Spurs can learn anything from that game on Sunday, if you can take your chances, Spurs will batter United if they can put the ball in the back of the net. That's going to be the thing, because our pressing numbers, everything like that, we were creating more dangerous turnovers than what Liverpool were at Old Trafford on Sunday. But Liverpool they've got that conviction that we kind of lack. But again, we spoke about that already. But we should batter United. But I put that down as a draw. But that's because me thinking that we'll go there and just miss chances. But we should 100% beat them.
We'll beat United. They're in a bad way, United, at the minute. Really bad way. And I think next couple of games, I think every single game, I think every team is looking at United now and thinking we can get at them. And I think that is United's biggest problem. I think when you're looking at even a team like Spurs, look, teams will be looking at us and thinking we can get at Spurs. But teams will also be looking at us and thinking we'll probably have 30% possession. We're going to have to take our limited opportunities that we get. You look at Newcastle, they only had 2 or 3 opportunities. And, if we can, I think, like you said, you're so right about it being our chance creation and our chance, finishing, our, the ability to put the ball back in there is the most important thing for us, because that will, hopefully make teams pretty scared of us pretty quickly. And I think United are the sort of opposite of that, where it's like they struggle so much in almost every department right now. And I think when you look at the 2 projects, I think they're worlds apart in terms of the ceiling I see for either of them and the managers.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. Ferencváros, think we'll win that away. Our away record in Europe is dreadful.
I know, but I think something that's way more positive for us now is we've got a lot of players that, instead of it being we're going to Europa League, we've got to play Davinson Sanchez and we've got to play Harry Winks in midfield. It's now like, I'm excited to see Dragusin and Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray get chances and Mike Moore come in.
I can't wait for Europa League to
start. So excited about it. And I think I'm so excited for this stretch of this period now where we have Sunday, Thursday, because look, it's harsh on the players. We're probably going to pick up injuries. It's so exciting for us because that's how we get to properly judge this squad. It's not just about the starting 11 anymore. It really is about the squad. And then, where are we going up to? We're going up to West Ham at home.
Yeah, Brighton away, then West Ham at home.
I think Brighton away is a very difficult game. I think I'll be pessimistic. I say I think we'll lose the Brighton away. And I think we beat West Ham at home. I think we'll have enough at home to beat West Ham. So I think we lose one game in that stretch. I mean, obviously, we could lose to Arsenal. We could lose to United. It'll be a very different picture. But, why not be confident going in? And also, if we do lose to Arsenal, it's not the end of the world. It's Arsenal. They're going to be challenging for the league title again this season. It's exactly. As long as, like what I said about the Newcastle performance, is the performance for me that when you look back on a week after the game, that is what is more important, because if we play like that against Newcastle, we're going to win that game 7-8 times out of 10 that we play it. So that for me is what gives me a little bit more confidence. And hopefully at home, if it was an away North London derby, I think my feeling around that game and that run potentially would be a lot different. But I think
Great.
even if we lose, the fans in the stadium are hopefully going to get to the game if I can, scrounge a ticket. I've been looking every single hour on the exchange and all that to hopefully get a ticket. But the fans will be behind the boys, even if we lose, I think. So I think
agree. I think a lot of people, again, kind of coming back to this perception of like what the reality actually is. I think a lot of people just want to see a good performance against Arsenal.
100%.
And again, you can say that, is that like we should be. I think on our day we can win that game. I think we can draw that game, and I think we can lose that game because they're very good side.
100% win that game, yeah.
Yeah, and especially with like you said earlier, with the injuries that they've got, or not injuries, sorry, the suspension of Rice and what they'll have to, because taking Rice out isn't just okay. We take Rice out, we put him in. They have to really kind of rethink about balancing things. It's like us losing, I don't know, maybe. It's like us losing a striker, I guess, in terms of how we have to really kind of rebalance things and, kind of go back to the drawing board. I'm pretty sure, I actually had us not to lose a game in that run, which I think is quite optimistic. But I also had us to draw to Man United and draw to Brighton. So I think we probably end up on the same points there. Overall, I know it's two different competitions and a cup competition, but
yeah, I think hopefully, we might pick up one or two injuries during that run, but you'd hope this season. I mean, what we had against Chelsea last year was a complete anomaly in terms of two big injuries for our two most important players at that point. I think, lots of other little things happened, and like hopefully we avoid that. And if we might pick up an injury to a Pedro Porro, we might pick up an injury to Son. It might be a game or two they miss here and there, but we now have the squad for me that can deal with those little injuries, and as long as we don't have a crisis. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be confident heading into that run of games. And I think it's almost good that we start with Arsenal. And I think we will put in a good performance against Arsenal. I do think we'll play well. And even if we lose, I think that will give us a little bit of confidence that we can go toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the league. And hopefully we kick on from there. And, if we win that game against Arsenal, I mean, the confidence boost that will give that squad and Ange Postecoglou, I think, and the fans in the stadium will be absolutely massive for us. And I also think equally... getting through against Coventry, getting to see a few of the younger players, that is what Spurs fans want to see. That will be equally as positive, I think. Actually, it's nice to have Coventry, Brentford, and then Karabakh. We can really bounce back from that Arsenal game if we do pick up a negative result. So, that run of fixtures, I think, falls quite nicely for us. And hopefully that's where our season really starts.
Yeah, I agree. I saw Guardiola talking about, and it's one of these funny psychology things with Guardiola where he was talking at the start of the season like, I'm not as motivated to win a league title. And then he came out and said after the West Ham games, like, the season hasn't started yet. It starts after the international break. And I do think, obviously, it's easy to say that when you've just won 3 games on the bounce, looking arguably more convincing than you did last year.
He is right, though.
He's right. He's right. I think that's sort of how Tottenham should look at it as well. And I think there's going to be a lot to learn out of those games. I want to ask you something, just pick up on something what you just said there. Outside of the obvious, you mentioned like an injury to Porro. Outside of the obvious, in terms of Romero and Van de Ven, because we know what happens if we lose one of them or both of them, who do you think is the player that we can afford to lose the least out of that starting 11? Because when you said that, I think Pedro Porro, I was always, last season, for a large period, when it came to our fullbacks, I was always like, a doggy is, I love a doggy. I don't get me wrong, I still love them both very, very much. But I was always like a doggy over Porro, and I loved the doggy in terms of his physicality and his tenacity and everything. I actually think Porro was I always underappreciated Porro a little bit. I think he started the season really, really well. And I think, again, kind of coming back to what we were talking about earlier, like a doggy coming into the season, not that sharp, not that fresh, obviously off the back of an injury. Porro has had a whole pre-season. He played basically every minute of every game in pre-season.
I think he's been outstanding.
He's been unbelievably good. And I just don't think he kind of gets that level of, like, I still seen, like, I put a tweet out yesterday of his goal and assist catalogue, and like someone was like, now show us his defending catalogue. I was like, I think his defending has improved massively. Like, it's not an issue. Who do you think is the player that we can kind of afford to lose the least? Is he up there for you? Because he's up there for people. I'm not sure he's the one.
He's top 3, definitely.
Yeah,
I think you're completely right. I think right now Porro is the better player than a doggy. I think he's a little bit calmer, a little bit more mature in the way he plays. But I think definitely a doggy does definitely have a high ceiling, I think, when I look at those two. And also they complement each other really nicely. They've both got different qualities, which is good.
Yeah.
I don't think Maddison would be that big a loss right now. I think we've got Bergvall and Kulusevski to come back in. I think Bissouma's a big one, but Bentancur can come in and cover him. Obviously Sonny, but even if Son's out now, we've got players like Odebear who can come in and start there.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
It's probably a player that we haven't even really seen that much. It's probably Solanke, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
he's already out injured.
if Richarlison's fit, Solanke's not as big. I genuinely think Pat Matasar, I know a lot of people wouldn't even necessarily start him. I've always said it. I've been saying this since last season. So Pat Matasar is so key in terms of what he gives us in that midfield, whether you bring him off the bench or whether he starts the game, because he's an absolute engine in that. When you look at Bissouma, Bentancur, Maddison, those three are all lovely technical footballers, but they don't necessarily have the just raw energy that Pat Matasar has to, press high, get back. And I think what he gives us, maybe what he doesn't give us on the boys, why a lot of people wouldn't start him, and I wouldn't start him against Arsenal. That's probably why. But
yeah,
I mean, I thought he was really good in the first half against Newcastle. Obviously, got taken off because of the booking, I think. But
I think Ange literally said exactly that after the game. He said, "I took him off because he was on a yellow card. That's why."
Yeah. And he's the sort of player where when he's on a yellow, it becomes a little bit more dangerous because of how intense he is. But yeah, I think bringing that intensity, even if it's off the bench in the last half an hour when we're winning a game or losing a game, and you bring him on to win the ball back high up the pitch or to sit in there next to Bissouma, he's got so many, strings to his bow. I think I absolutely love Pat Matasar. I've always been a massive fan of him, and I think he would at least be in my top three most important Spurs players outside of that defence to lose, because I think he's an option that we don't have in that midfield right now. And I think when you're looking at other technical footballers who can come in and maybe replace a Bentancur, you've got Lucas Bergvall, who maybe say is a little bit more similar stylistically to a Bentancur than a Pat Matasar. So I think it's key that he stays fit to at least be an option in games for us, because I think he's an anomaly in our squad.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with that. I think as well, what I like about Sarr, and it's more of a basic kind of footballing principle rather than what you've just kind of said. I love the fact that one thing, and actually, Lily White Lab did. I spoke about this on the stream the other day. Lily White Lab did a really good thread on this. I think in January when we were kind of struggling to break down low blocks. Can we just take more shots from outside the area? And that's what Pat Matasar has actually started doing a lot of. He loves it. Little pop shot. He's got quite a pure strike. Like there was that one that he hit straight down the middle against Pope that he sort of made a real mess of that and it went out for a corner. Again, that's one thing I like with Porro as well. Like I know he had the most shots in the game out of anyone on Sunday, and he had a few that looked like they could have troubled the goalkeeper. But that's one thing I have noticed a kind of difference in this season, a bit more of a confidence to do that, which I do like.
I love Sarr, man. I love him.
He is such a good player. Right, let's go. Let's finish up with some questions. So I asked Jack Enoch question earlier in terms of the inverted fullback. Question from Gary Hunter. Who would win in a round robin FIFA tournament? Me, you, or Will? Do you play much? FIFA?
Mate, I used to smash FIFA. I don't play it as much anymore. I played it first year university, which sort of cost me a first year grade. But
yeah, foot champs? Was you playing foot champs?
Yeah. I've got elite a couple of times in foot champs, but I was mainly like a sort of back in the day. I was mainly like a gold 1, gold 2 sort of standard player. So I was pretty decent. I reckon right now, I got rid of my Xbox like 2 years ago to really focus on my studying, because to be honest, I was pretty addicted to it and I just wasn't going to lectures. Yeah. So I think right now maybe I'm a little bit weaker, but I think it would all come back to me.
I think it was the muscle memory, isn't it? I don't know. I think he's got an Xbox. I'm pretty sure, because I was like, what we want to do is I don't know how much he actually plays.
He strikes me as more of a Fortnite kind of guy.
Yeah, I think he does. Will's how old? You're 22, right? 21.
21, yeah.
21. I think he's the same age as you. I'm a little bit older. He was definitely a Fortnite. We were actually talking about this the last time we did the pod, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm more of a, like, when I play PlayStation, I either play Warzone. I do like FIFA, and I probably will get the new FIFA, because we've been asked many times if we're going to do a daring and doing pro clubs, which I think would be fun.
That'd be sick, yeah.
I think that would be sick. So I think you might.
I'll get an Xbox back just to get involved in that.
Sweet. All right. Well, that's free. We could get a load of people to join that. That would be such a laugh. I'm all right at FIFA. I was, again, pretty same as you. I was like gold 1, pretty much foot champs most weeks, gold 2. Sometimes when you have a stinky weekend, you drop into the silvers. I don't want to be doing that much. But I don't enjoy it as much anymore. Did you actually see that?
Fallen off so much.
It's so bad. I was actually the last couple of FIFAs I've not played Ultimate Team at all, and then I started playing it right at the end, just before the new one's going to come out, because it's so easy to get good players. Yeah. And I was actually playing it a little bit yesterday because I could just get rinse the 85 times 10 packs and get like I've got like an amazing team straight away.
That's what annoys me though, the fact that I remember back in the day, I remember the first FIFA I played was 13 when I was like 11, and
fuck me, mine was FIFA 2005. Jesus Christ.
Really? Yeah, I was 3 years old at that point.
Fresh out of the womb.
Yeah, I remember just back in those days, you could pack like an inform 80 rated shit, and he'd sell for like 100k, and he'd be like so rare.
Yeah.
And these days, like no one has starter team. That used to be the best bit of FIFA, having a 6 starter team, playing that for a couple of months, and then people start to get special cards in like December, January sort of time.
Yeah, it's
around team of the year. But mate,
that's why like Van der Ven. I saw now Palace have signed Lacroix. Everyone was talking about Van der Ven and Lacroix as like the ultimate starter pack, like starter team defensive partnership.
For the first 3 days.
Yeah, and then it'd be like you could just get some ridiculous cards. I actually saw Gareth Bale as an icon this year on FIFA.
Is he?
Yeah, 88 rated though. It's been done a bit dirty, I think.
Do they not have the like 3 stages of the icon now though?
Not anymore. It's just a base, and then it's like I think they do like special promo ones throughout the year. I'm pretty sure.
Stinks, mate. What have they done? What have they done to that game? Honestly,
I know. It's not base. Was it base, mid, and prime? They don't do that anymore. I don't think.
People like these companies sometimes just less is more.
Exactly.
I really think less is more, and I do think less people play the game now. So
yeah, exactly. One thing you can tell about the international break being back is that the Bale, Salah, Hazard debate has come back again.
Yeah,
people are just so fucking bored. Where do you? I mean, I feel like we all know where we both stand on this, but is there any real debate between?
No one should have a debate on it. Like it's Bale, Salah, Hazard. But I mean, I personally prefer Hazard to Salah. Like, if you're telling me like what footballer do you prefer, it's Hazard. Well, not out of Bale and Hazard, but out of Hazard and Salah. I think Salah has had a better career now, and you'd have to say that he was 100%. A more successful player. But in terms of me personally, Bale, Hazard, Salah. Yeah. But the actual list, if I was making a video or something, would be Bale, Salah, Hazard for me.
Yeah, I agree. I made a TikTok last night because there was someone that was rinsing Bale, calling him a moments player on Twitter, and I was like, hasn't had a bad career for a moments player. And what is a moments player? Is it someone that produces big moments in big games for his club and country? I was like,
that tends to be pretty useful, actually.
It doesn't sound that much like a bad thing.
I quoted that one. I was like, he's had about 1,000 moments in his career.
Yeah, exactly. Scored a bicycle kick in the Champions League final, hat trick in the San Siro for when he was like a teenager.
Yeah, no, it's just those moments against Getafe, though, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Someone compared him to Di Maria. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Yeah, it was like that same thread. I'm pretty sure it was like he's no better than Di Maria. I was like, come on,
crazy.
So yeah, we might have to run up the Daring and Doing Pro clubs. That'd be quite fun,
mate. I will be there.
Actually, someone has asked a question who I'm pretty sure is in the FIFA community. I think Kim Pembro says, "Would you rather Spurs played Conte ball and finished 4th every season, or Ange ball and finished 6th or 7th?" That's such a hard question because it's just like
I'm going to be completely honest with you. Conte and finish 4th.
Yeah, it probably is, isn't it?
Because, what is Conte ball? Because Conte ball was really fun at the start.
Yeah, Conte ball if you're talking Conte ball at its actual effective best, and it guarantees you finish 4th, 100%.
Mate, I've said it multiple times. Give Conte the team we've got now, he would kirk. But
Romero, Dragusin, and Van der Ven.
No, the stuff with Conte was off the pitch stuff. He always thought he was better than the club.
Yeah,
he frustrated, and a lot of stuff happened during his reign. I think we've spoken about it before. I was a big fan of Conte. I liked him as a player. I just wanted him to do well ever since he came to Spurs. I don't know why. I loved his passion and stuff, but towards the end, it got really sour. And obviously he had to go. But he had stuff like he lost one of his good friends who was on his coaching staff, which would have been really, really difficult. And I think Alistair Gold wrote an article about how much he suffered with that come the end of his Spurs time. And I think it all sort of led to a bitter end, which was really disappointing for me. But if you're talking Conte ball, he doesn't play bad football. He's not like a Jose Mourinho where he really does play some stale football. I mean, it was towards the end, don't get me wrong.
Oh God, fuck me. It was bad.
Yeah, it was I mean, it's a results business, football really, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, we want to finish high up in the table with Ange Postecoglou. If Ange finishes 7th or 8th, and that doesn't deem a successful season, it probably means that we have a lot of issues. So,
yeah, exactly.
I think I'd definitely take Conte and finishing 4th, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I like Conte, but seeing him implode over the summer at Napoli was fucking brilliant. And then losing the first game 3-0. I always ask this question: who do you hold more hatred for out of Conte and Mourinho?
Oh, 100% Jose Mourinho.
Really? I'm actually the opposite, but I don't know why.
Really?
I think it's because I got when Conte did that press conference, at Southampton, I lost my fucking head at that. I was just like, I was fully heads gone in terms of like sack him now. I was like, he was right, and like in terms of a lot of what he was saying, but I was just like, you're just doing us a fucking favor. Please just fuck off and go somewhere else. Like, please.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you from that point of view.
Yeah,
I think
I actually quite like Mourinho. I just think Mourinho's more like Mourinho at the end was probably, I don't even know what was more messy, to be honest. I think what Conte left us with in terms of Stellini, and then made like that was like that whole period of time was just depressing. Whereas Mourinho, it was like, well, whatever. Like Mason did all right when he came in.
But I hate the way Mourinho's chatted about Spurs afterwards. Like, oh, give me that cup final, mate. You'd have got slapped up in that cup final. We were terrible.
This is what I never understand. Bad. I have this debate all the time about
all the time.
It was completely right to sack Mourinho before that final. Yeah. And again, it's like the perception from non-Spurs fans of like, yeah, but he's got a great track record in terms of winning trophies. Like, yeah, but we were playing Man City.
We lost about 7 games in a row before that, and he was playing the most turgid football ever.
We got beat by a team whose manager was in prison a week before.
I think people forget, because it was a long ago now, how bad we were under Mourinho. Like, how bad we were. I mean, look, I think Mourinho probably got back to the least out of any Spurs manager I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah. Also COVID though, wasn't it? It was difficult.
Yeah, it was difficult, definitely. But when you look back at it, we signed like Doherty, we signed players like Carlos Vinicius and stuff. It was a rough time. I don't think he got back to the level he needed to. But
bring Vinicius back for the Europa League, I reckon.
Yeah, mate, facts. Score a hat-trick against Marine in the FA Cup again. What a blow. But yeah, I think Mourinho I don't like more. I think the one thing with Mourinho that I'll never forget is he had the period of time where Ndombele was balling out for Spurs.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I nearly cry every time I speak about Tanguy Ndombele and the player that he could become. I mean, he probably the most talented player, like natural ability I've ever seen at Spurs. Yeah. We've seen, I'm not joking when I say, like, we've seen Modric, Bale. I genuinely think Ndombele was like, just like, in terms of raw ability, like turning in tight spaces, his ability to like manipulate the ball with his body, best I've seen at Spurs. And he never went on to it. But he did have that period under Mourinho, which I'll always love him for.
Yeah. Did you see he's won the most amount of duels out of any midfielder in Ligue 1 so far this season?
Bring him back, mate. Bring him back.
And Ndombele Remontada, I think, would send Spurs fans over the edge. Like, why couldn't he fucking done that last season? We could have got some money for him.
Yeah. It's just, it's really fascinating with Ndombele how a player can, I'm always hesitant to like slate a player and say they don't care about their career or they've made poor choices, because realistically we don't really know what's been happening off the pitch. But it's painfully obvious how little he actually cared about making it to the top of the game with him.
Even though he kind of used Spurs, he almost admitted that he used Spurs as a stepping stone to kind of get to a bigger club, which was
that's his whole attitude, isn't he? He thinks he's too good for everything. So
yeah. A couple of other questions. Ollie Fall, we kind of already sort of touched on this, but he said, do you think Solanke will seriously improve our results? For example, if we had him up front for the rest of the season, would we perform better? I think we've sort of already touched on that. 100%. Yidami says, would you consider doing a back three? Again, we sort of already spoke about that. Final question is from Luca, who says, where do you see Spurs in 3 years? And do you think we'll get a trophy before Son leaves/retires?
I'll let you go first with that one, mate. I'll have a little think.
Sorry, I've actually just seen something on Twitter that apparently Jed Spence and Reguilon have been left out of the Europa League squad.
Jed Spence has?
Yeah, we knew. I mean, we kind of knew it with Reguilon, but yeah, Jed Spence has been left out of the squad. Yeah,
surely that was where he's going to get his opportunities.
Yeah, that doesn't really make any sense.
What?
And Cole Palmer's not been selected for Chelsea's Conference League squad. This is fucking mental.
What?
I know. So, in answer to the question, where do I see Spurs in 3 years? It's hard. I think we'll be similar to where we are now. I don't know. I think it's going to be hard to like. I don't know actually, because it's. Where do I see Spurs in 3 years? I think the one change that will be made is that I think we'll go back to being a regular top four side rather than a team flirting with the top four. I do think we can make that break to get back in.
Yeah.
100%. Do I think we'll win a trophy? Fuck it, we're going to win the Europa League this year anyway, so yeah. Son's going to lift it. What about?
Sing the song, mate.
Whoa. It's like the GOAT anthem. Would you be... Actually, this is kind of a stupid question. if Spurs won the Europa League and Son left in the summer, would you be happy with that? That's kind of important. Yeah.
Well,
it's hard.
I want Sonny I want him to retire at Spurs. He will retire at Spurs. There's nowhere else he's going. Maybe he did a year in South Korea, but that's just like, is that really his level? I think even at like 35, Son would be way too good for that league. So
yeah,
I think
back to Leverkusen to make him even more unstoppable.
Huh?
Back to Leverkusen to make him even more unstoppable.
Oh mate, Jesus, yeah. I mean, him with Florian Wirtz and Boniface and stuff, that'd be unreal. But no, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'd literally do anything for a trophy. If Tottenham Hotspur Football Club ceased to exist after this season, but we win a Carabao Cup, then I'd probably take that at this point, to be honest. Because, but yeah, no, I think in 3 years I see Spurs. I think it's difficult to say like regular top four, because I think the way that the landscape of football now
changed
is
massively.
like the amount of money in the Premier League. Like it's not like I'd say it's not like the mid 2010s anymore. You still got Arsenal finish 4th every season. Above that, you got City are in there every year, United are in there every year. But I think now it's like it almost changes year on year who's going to get top 4. Like if you analyse the state of play a year ago today, it's like so different. So
yeah, agreed.
I think we will be there or thereabouts still. I mean, look, it depends how the project goes. In 3 years, you'd like to be thinking that with the project, if it goes the way we want it to under Ange Postecoglou, we'll be challenging for a league title. I mean, I know it sounds ambitious and bold, but realistically, what's the point of this project if that's not where we're going to be in 3 years?
Yeah, true.
Do I actually think we're going to be there? Probably not, to be honest. I think City are still too strong. I think their model's too strong. I think Arsenal will continue this trajectory. I see Arteta at Arsenal for like 10, 15 years. I see him being like a sort of
Wenger.
Yeah, Wenger sort of Alex Ferguson. Well, not maybe as successful as Alex Ferguson, definitely not as successful, but that sort of longevity there. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of teams at the top. I think Spurs, we do still need to remember with Spurs that we are a smaller club than Liverpool, United, City. Well, debatable history-wise with City, but Chelsea and stuff like we are like naturally a smaller club than those. And if Liverpool are back at the top, if United get back to the top in some way with their new owners, Arsenal, City, it is always naturally going to be a little bit more difficult for Spurs to compete with those teams. Just in general, it just always has been, and it pretty much always will be. So, yeah, there's no reason why we can't be up there, but it's going to be difficult, definitely.
Yeah, I do agree. It's hard. I think that's kind of an optimistic suggestion to say that we, you don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. You really don't. But
yeah,
that's probably where we're going to leave it today, mate. So thank you very much for that. Enjoyed that. I'm trying to dig into this Jed Spence thing a little bit more, but I'm sure we'll be talking about that on videos and stuff in the next day or so. And I think we'll find out actually the whole Europa League squad, because I can't actually find that anywhere.
I can't believe he's been left out. That's crazy. But
yeah, it's mad. I don't really get it. But yeah, nice one, mate. Give yourself a shout out. Tell everyone where they can find you in your TikTok pages and YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah,
we'll put everything in the description.
Yeah, Seb on Football on YouTube, on TikTok. Be much appreciated. Trying to get a few more followers on Twitter. Also, Seb Martin on there, I think. So, yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, mate. I enjoyed it.
Enjoyed it, mate. We'll be back for the next one if he makes it out alive from the Polish woods.
Sorry about that, guys. We'll be back, but you know.
No, yeah. Well, we'll definitely get you back on regardless, anyway, mate. Because we're gonna try and get some more people on throughout the course of the season. So you guys in the comments, let us know who you want to see us kind of chat to.
Get Simon on. I'd watch that.
Yeah, that is a good idea, because he does I'm pretty sure he does jump on other people's stuff. So we'd
I was on a podcast. I was on Holly's podcast with him.
Oh, you were, weren't you? Yeah, we'd definitely love to do that. But yeah, that's where we're going to leave it today, everyone. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow us on Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff, and we will see you next time. And up Spurs.